The grand chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure that orbited the neutral world below. Inside, representatives from 47 different species gathered under the dome of lights. Captain Han Ji-woo stood in the center of the room, his uniform crisp and clean, his face calm despite the chaos around him. Next to him stood Dr. Park Min-ji, her hands clasped tightly together as she watched the alien faces staring down at them. They had come here to defend humanity. They had come here believing in justice. Now, as Ji-woo looked at the hostile eyes surrounding them, he wondered if they had been fools to hope. "The evidence is clear," Ambassador Krell announced, his insect-like body clicking as he moved. His voice echoed through the chamber, cold and sharp. "Humanity has violated the weapons treaty. They have created illegal military technology. They have attacked peaceful traders. They are a threat to galactic peace." 40 peace. Ji-woo clenched his jaw. Every word was a lie. The so-called peaceful traders had been pirates, raiders who attacked human colonies and killed innocent people. Humanity had defended itself. Nothing more. But when he tried to speak, his voice was drowned out by the angry buzzing and hissing of the alien council members. "We have the right to defend ourselves," Dr. Park Min-ji said, her voice strong despite her fear. "Our colonies were under attack. What were we supposed to do? Let our people die?" High Chancellor Thorin leaned forward on his throne. His reptilian face showed no emotion, but his eyes gleamed with something dark. "You were supposed to follow the law. You were supposed to request council protection. Instead, you took matters into your own hands. You built weapons that violate every treaty you signed." "We built defensive systems," Ji-woo argued. "We never attacked anyone who didn't attack us first." "You tested weapons capable of destroying entire fleets," Krell interrupted, displaying a hologram in the center of the room. The image showed a human weapon firing, a bright burst of energy that tore through space. Ji-woo stared at the hologram. It had been taken out of context, edited to look worse than it was. The weapon shown was a prototype, a shield system that could deflect incoming fire. But the video made it look like a doomsday weapon. He opened his mouth to explain, but Thorin raised his hand. "Enough. The council has heard your defense. Now we will vote." The voting began immediately. One by one, the alien representatives cast their votes. Guilty. 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 The words echoed through the chamber, like a death sentence. Ji-woo felt his heart sink as he realized the truth. This wasn't a trial. This had never been a trial. The decision had been made before they ever entered this room. Dr. Park Min-ji's face went pale. "This isn't fair," she whispered. "They planned this. They wanted us gone from the start." Ji-woo knew she was right. For 50 years, humanity had been part of the Galactic Council. For 50 years, they had contributed, innovated, and helped the galaxy grow. But humanity had done something unforgivable in the eyes of the elder races. They had advanced too quickly. They had refused to stay in their place. They had dared to be equal. The final vote came in. 42 species voted guilty. Only 5 voted to give humanity another chance. The gavel came down with a sound like thunder. "Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council," Thorin announced. "All human colonies outside the Sol system must be abandoned within 3 standard years. All trading rights are revoked. All diplomatic channels are closed. A quarantine zone will be established around human space. Any ship that attempts to leave will be destroyed without warning." The words hit Ji-woo like physical blows. 3 years to evacuate dozens of colonies. Millions of people forced to leave their homes. Generations of work destroyed in a single afternoon. He wanted to rage, to fight, to make them see reason. But he knew it would do no good. Instead, he straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Thorin. "You're making a mistake. You think you're protecting the galaxy from humanity, but you're wrong. One day, you'll realize that. One day, you'll need us. And I hope, when that day comes, that we're better people than you've been today." Krell laughed, a harsh, chittering sound. "Humanity will never be needed by the Council. You are primitive. You are violent. You are nothing without us. Then, you have nothing to fear from us." Dr. Park Minji said quietly. "Let us leave. In peace." The Council dismissed them without another word. As Jiwoo and Minji walked out of the chamber, they passed groups of alien diplomats who whispered and pointed. Some looked satisfied. Others looked uncomfortable, as if they knew something wrong had happened, but lacked the courage to speak up. On the shuttle back to their ship, Minji pulled out her datapad. Her hands shook as she scrolled through the information. "Jiwoo, look at this. I've been monitoring the deep space sensors. There are anomalies at the edge of the galaxy. Massive spatial distortions. Something's coming." Jiwoo looked at the data. The readings were unlike anything he had seen before. "I tried. They wouldn't listen. They said I was making excuses, trying to distract them." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with worry. "These readings are serious. Something bad is happening out there. Something the Council needs to know about." "They won't listen to us now," Jiwoo said bitterly. "We're outcasts. Criminals, in their eyes. Then we need to prepare ourselves," Minji replied. "If the Council won't protect the galaxy, maybe we need to be ready to do it ourselves." Their ship left the Council station and jumped into faster-than-light travel. Behind them, the Grand Chamber continued its business, the Council members celebrating their victory over the human threat. None of them noticed the warnings flashing on their own sensors. None of them saw the distortions growing at the edge of space. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity had been cast out. The dream of being part of a galactic community was over. In cities across the planet, people gathered to watch the announcement. Some cried, some grew angry. Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood in the military command center, watching the reports come in from the colonies. He had feared this day would come. The elder races had always been jealous of humanity's potential. Now they had found an excuse to get rid of them. "Start the evacuation protocols," he ordered. "We have 3 years to bring everyone home." "Make it happen." Engineer Lee Hyun was already working on the logistics. "We'll need to retrofit every ship we have. The colonies are spread across hundreds of light years. Some are so far out that it will take months just to reach them." "Then we start immediately," Do-yoon replied. "No one gets left behind." As the orders went out and the great evacuation began, humanity faced its darkest hour. They had been rejected, cast out, and labeled as criminals. But they were not broken. Captain Han Ji-woo's words echoed in the minds of everyone who heard them. One day, the Council would need them. One day, they would realize their mistake. Humanity would be ready for that day, and they would be stronger than ever before. The evacuation fleet stretched across the darkness of space like a river of lights. Hundreds of ships, from massive colony transports to small personal vessels, all heading toward the same destination: home, Earth, the one place in the universe that humanity could still call their own. Admiral Kim Do-yoon stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the convoy move through the void. Every ship was packed beyond capacity. Families huddled together in cargo bays. Children slept in hallways. People who had lived their entire lives on distant worlds now faced the reality of leaving everything behind. "Sir, we're getting reports of attacks in Sector 7, his communications officer said. "Raiders are hitting the slower transports." Do-yoon's jaw tightened. Without Council protection, humanity had become easy prey. Pirates and raiders who had once feared Council justice now saw defenseless targets. "Send the escort group. Tell them to use whatever force is necessary." The truth was brutal and simple. The Council had not just expelled humanity. They had abandoned them to die. No protection, no mercy. Just 3 years to gather millions of people and flee across hostile space. On the colony world of New Haven, Governor Choi Yuna stood in the central plaza, watching families board the evacuation ships. The line seemed endless. Parents carried crying children. Old people moved slowly, clutching the few possessions they could bring. Everyone's face showed the same expression: loss, fear, grief. For the homes they were leaving behind, a young woman approached her, tears streaming down her face. "Governor, they say there aren't enough ships. They say some of us have to stay behind." Yuna felt her heart break. She had run the numbers 100 times, hoping for a different answer. But the math was cruel and clear. New Haven was too far from Earth. The deadline was too short. They didn't have enough ships for everyone. "I know," Yuna said softly. "I'm working on it." But she wasn't working on it. She had already made her decision. She would stay. She and a group of volunteers would remain behind, buying time and space for the families to escape. It was the only way. That night, she recorded a message for her sister on Earth. "Don't be sad for me. I'm doing what needs to be done. Take care of Mom. Tell her I love her. Tell her I died doing something that mattered." In the engineering bays of the transport ships, Lee Hyun worked without sleep. The ships were breaking down, pushed beyond their limits. They had been designed for short trips, not for carrying thousands of people across hundreds of light years. Every day brought new failures, new emergencies, new problems that threatened lives. "We need replacement parts," his assistant said, pulling up a list on the screen. "The quantum drives are burning out. The life support systems are failing. We can't keep these ships running much longer." "Then we build new parts," Hyun replied. "We can't rely on alien technology anymore. We need to make everything ourselves." It was during those desperate weeks that humanity's true innovation began. Cut off from galactic trade, they had to invent solutions. They had to adapt. They had to become self-sufficient in ways they never had before. Hyun and his team worked around the clock, designing new systems, creating new technologies, finding ways to keep the evacuation fleet moving. The convoy reached the halfway point when disaster struck. A group of ships carrying 20,000 people was ambushed by a fleet of raiders. Admiral Do-yoon received the distress call and immediately changed course, but he knew he might not arrive in time. On one of the attacked ships, a young officer named Bak Soo-hyun took command when her captain was killed in the first volley. She had never led before. She had never been in combat. But now, with raiders closing in and civilians screaming in terror, she had no choice. "All power to shields," she ordered. "Send out a distress signal, and someone find me a weapon." The ship shook as enemy fire hit the hull. Systems sparked and died. But Soo-hyun kept her crew focused. They jury-rigged weapons from mining equipment. They used the ship's engines to create a defensive screen. They fought with everything they had, desperately holding on until help could arrive. Admiral Do-yoon's fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel like avenging angels. The military ships tore through the raiders with precision and fury. Every human death during the evacuation was personal. Every attack was an insult. Do-yoon showed no mercy. When the battle ended, he personally boarded the damaged civilian ship to check on the survivors. He found Bak Soo-hyun sitting in the captain's chair, covered in blood and ash, but alive. The civilians behind her were safe. "You did well," Do-yoon said simply. "How would you like a real command?" Back on Earth, Dr. Park Min-ji continued studying the spatial anomalies she had discovered. The readings were getting worse. The distortions were growing, spreading like cracks in reality itself. She tried again to send a warning to the council, but every message was blocked. Every channel was closed. "They're not going to listen," her colleague Yoon Jae-ho said. "We're outcasts now. They don't care what we have to say." "They will care when whatever's causing these distortions arrives," Min-ji replied. "This isn't just unusual data. This is something coming. Something big." She created detailed reports, complex models, predictions based on the best science humanity had. All of it pointed to one conclusion. A massive threat was approaching the galaxy, and the Council had no idea. Months passed. The evacuation continued. More ships arrived at Earth every week, packed with exhausted refugees. The planet's orbital space became crowded with temporary habitats. Cities expanded overnight. Resources stretched thin. But humanity adapted. They always did. On New Haven, Governor Choi Yuna watched the last evacuation ship lift off into the sky. She stood with 300 volunteers who had chosen to stay behind. They waved goodbye to their families, knowing they would never see them again. "We bought them time," Yuna said to her volunteers. "We gave them a chance to live. That's enough." But fate had other plans. A ship appeared in orbit. Not a human vessel. An alien ship. It carried the colors of an independent trader, someone not bound by council law. The captain's message was simple. "I have room for 300 more. Want a ride?" Yuna stared at the screen in disbelief. "Why would you help us?" "Because what the council did was wrong," the alien captain replied. "Not all of us agree with their decision. Hurry. I don't have much time before council patrols spot me." They boarded the ship with minutes to spare. As New Haven fell away behind them, Yuna cried for the first time since the evacuation began. Not tears of sadness, but of hope. There were still good people in the galaxy. Still those who chose compassion over politics. The final human ship crossed into the Sol system exactly 3 days before the deadline. Admiral Do-yoon stood on the bridge as Earth came into view, surrounded by thousands of other vessels. They had done it. Against all odds, they had brought their people home. The cost had been terrible. Hundreds had died in the fighting. Ships had been lost. Colonies that took generations to build were abandoned. But humanity survived. Commander Bak Soo-hyun, now promoted for her bravery, monitored the council's communication channels from a hidden listening post. What she heard made her blood run cold. The council space was in chaos. Systems were going dark. Entire fleets were disappearing. And the words repeated over and over in panicked transmissions spoke of something called the Devourers. She sent her report to Admiral Do-yoon immediately. He read it in silence, then forwarded it to Captain Han Ji-woo and Dr. Park Min-ji. "The anomalies," Min-ji whispered when she saw the data. "They're here. Whatever I detected is here." Ji-woo looked at the reports of council ships vanishing, of planets being consumed, of an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "They cast us out. They called us the threat. And now the real danger has arrived. Do we help them?" Do-yoon asked. The question hung in the air. After everything the council had done, did humanity owe them anything? The debate would rage in government chambers and public forums for weeks, but deep down, everyone knew the truth. If the council fell, humanity would be next. This wasn't about revenge or justice. This was about survival, and humanity was very good at surviving. 18 months had passed since humanity retreated behind the quarantine zone. The Sol system had transformed into something remarkable. Massive orbital stations circled Earth like steel moons. Construction yards built new ships at a pace that would have seemed impossible before the exile. Humanity, forced to rely only on themselves, had discovered just how capable they truly were. Engineer Lee Hyun stood in the main research facility, watching his team test a new type of engine. Without access to alien technology, they had been forced to innovate. The result was something better than what the council had. Faster, more efficient, completely human in design. "Run it again," he ordered. The engine hummed to life, creating a stable field that bent space itself. "Perfect. Start installing these in the defense fleet." Across the facility, scientist Yoon Jae-ho worked on a different problem. He studied the data Dr. Park Min-ji had collected about the spatial anomalies. For months, he had been trying to understand what they meant. Now, with new reports coming from Commander Bak Soo-hyun's spy network, the pieces were falling into place. They exist partially outside our dimension, he said, talking to himself as he often did when focused. That's why council weapons don't work. They're shooting at targets that aren't entirely there. Dr. Park Min-ji entered the lab, her face grave. I just received the latest intelligence. The Krill Empire is gone. Completely destroyed. 12 systems consumed in a matter of days. The Krill had been humanity's enemies before the exile. They had raided human colonies and killed thousands. But hearing of their complete destruction was still horrifying. 12 systems meant billions of lives. Billions of people, gone. How many species has this enemy destroyed now? Yoon Jae-ho asked. 4 complete extinctions, dozens more barely surviving. The council is in full retreat. Min-ji pulled up a star map. Red markers showed where the enemy had struck. The pattern was spreading like a disease across the galaxy. They're calling them devourers. They consume everything. Planets, ships, even stars. Commander Bak Soo-hyun's hidden monitoring stations continued sending updates. She had positioned them just outside the quarantine zone, carefully hidden from council sensors. Through them, humanity watched the galaxy tear itself apart. The Vex Collective's homeworld fell on a Tuesday. The insect species that had been so proud, so ancient, reduced to refugees fleeing in whatever ships they could find. Ambassador Krell, who had lied about humanity at the trial, was among the survivors. Soo-hyun watched his ship drift through space, damaged and desperate, and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Should we help them? Her assistant asked. No, Soo-hyun replied. They made their choice when they cast us out. Let them face the consequences. But not everyone agreed. Captain Han Ju-woo, now promoted to Commodore, stood before the United Earth government, making his case. I understand the desire for revenge. I feel it too. But billions of innocent people are dying. Children, families, people who had nothing to do with our exile. They stood by and watched, one representative argued. They let the council cast us out. They attacked our evacuation ships. Why should we care what happens to them? Because we're better than that, Ji-woo replied. Because if we let them all die when we could have helped, we become the monsters they claimed we were. The debate raged for hours. President Nam So-jun, a hard man who had lost his own son during the evacuation, listened in silence. Finally, he raised his hand for quiet. The Commodore is right. But he's also wrong. We should help. But not yet. Not until they ask. Not until they admit they were wrong. He looked at Ji-woo with cold eyes. Pride is what got them into this mess. Let them swallow that pride before we lift a finger. Deep in the research labs, Yoon Jae-ho made his breakthrough. He had been studying the Devourer's attack patterns, comparing them with the spatial anomaly data. The answer hit him like lightning. They're not from our universe, he announced to the assembled scientists. They're breaking through from somewhere else. That's why they consume everything. They're converting our matter into energy to sustain their transition into our dimension. Can we stop them? Min-ji asked. Maybe. If we can force them fully into our dimension, they become vulnerable. But that requires technology the Council doesn't have. Technology we might be able to build. The message arrived 3 days later. A single ship approached the quarantine zone, broadcasting on all frequencies. It carried the flag of the Galactic Council. Inside was High Chancellor Thorin himself, along with Ambassador Krell and a small delegation. Admiral Kim Do-yoon received the transmission request. They want to talk. Let them wait, President Nam So-jun said. Let them sit out there for a while and think about what they're going to say. For 2 full days, the council ship waited at the edge of the quarantine zone. No response came from Earth. No acknowledgement. Just silence. Inside the ship, Thorin paced back and forth, his reptilian tail swishing with agitation. They're going to refuse us, Krell said quietly. The once proud ambassador looked broken. His home was gone. His people scattered. Why would they help after what we did? Because they're human, Thorin replied, though he didn't sound convinced. They claim to value mercy and compassion. Now we'll see if that was truth or propaganda. Finally, President Nam So-jun gave permission for the council ship to enter Sol space. But he set conditions. They would not meet on neutral ground. They would not negotiate as equals. If the council wanted humanity's help, they would come to Earth. They would kneel on human soil and beg. The alien delegation landed at the government complex in Geneva. As they stepped off their ship, they saw what humanity had built in 18 months. Towering structures of steel and glass, ships launching into orbit every few minutes, defense platforms visible even in daylight. The humans hadn't just survived their exile, they had thrived. Inside the assembly hall, President Nam So-jun waited with the full human government. Commodore Jiwoo stood at attention in his dress uniform. Dr. Park Min-ji sat with the Science Council. Admiral Do-yoon commanded the security detail. All of them watched as the aliens entered. Thorin looked at the faces staring at him. He saw no welcome there. No forgiveness. Only cold judgment. He had come prepared to negotiate, to make deals, to maintain some dignity. But looking at these humans, at what they had endured because of his decisions, he realized that dignity was a luxury he no longer deserved. Slowly, the High Chancellor of the Galactic Council lowered himself to his knees. Behind him, Ambassador Krell and the other delegates did the same. "We were wrong," Thorin said. His voice, usually so commanding, now sounded hollow. "We feared your potential. We envied your progress. So we conspired to remove you. We fabricated evidence. We rigged the trial. We cast you out not because you were dangerous, but because we were afraid of becoming irrelevant." Krell spoke next, his voice shaking. "I presented false testimony. I lied about your weapons. I destroyed your reputation before the galaxy. I did this because my species felt threatened by your achievements. There is no excuse. No justification. I am guilty of a terrible crime." The room remained silent. President Nam So-jun's face showed no emotion. "Now, we face extinction," Thorin continued. "An enemy we cannot fight with our weapons, our technology, or our strategies. Our fleets are being destroyed. Our worlds consumed. Billions are dead, and billions more will die. We have analyzed your scientific papers from before the exile. We believe you may have the key to stopping this threat." He raised his head to look directly at the president. "We are not asking you to rejoin the council. We are not offering you membership or status. We are simply begging for help. Not for us, for we deserve nothing, but for the innocent people dying across the galaxy. Please." President Nam So-jun stood slowly. He walked down from his platform and stood before the kneeling aliens. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice hard as iron. "You will issue a formal public apology to humanity, broadcast across the entire galaxy. You will grant us full autonomy and sovereignty, with no council jurisdiction over human space. You will cede the territories we were forced to abandon as reparations. And most importantly, if we agree to help, humans will command the military response. Not advise, not assist. Command. These are our terms. Accept them, or leave." Thorin didn't hesitate. "We accept. All of it. Just please, help us stop the Devourers before there's no galaxy left to save." Commodore Jiwoo stepped forward. "Then stand up. We have work to do." The broadcast went out across every inhabited system in the galaxy. High Chancellor Thorin appeared on billions of screens, his posture humble, his voice filled with regret. "Citizens of the Galactic Council, I stand before you today to confess a terrible wrong. 18 months ago, we expelled humanity from the Council. We told you they were dangerous. We said they violated our laws. We lied. The truth is that we feared them. We envied their progress. We conspired to remove them, not because they threatened us, but because they challenged our authority. We were wrong. And now, as our galaxy faces extinction, we have come to them seeking the help we do not deserve. Humanity, we are sorry. Ambassador Krell followed with his own confession, detailing exactly how he had fabricated evidence and manipulated the trial. Other council members who had participated in the conspiracy came forward as well. The galaxy watched in shock as their leaders admitted to corruption, prejudice, and betrayal. On Earth, people gathered in public spaces to watch. Some felt vindicated. Others felt angry that an apology came only because the council needed something. But most felt a grim determination. The past couldn't be changed. Only the future mattered now. President Nam Seojun addressed his own people after the council's broadcast. They wronged us. They hurt us. They forced us from our homes and left us to die. But today, we have a choice. We can let the galaxy burn, or we can be the people we always claimed to be. I choose mercy. I choose to help. Not for them, but for the billions of innocent people who had no part in our exile. What do you choose? The response was overwhelming. Humanity chose to help. Not because they forgave the council, but because it was the right thing to do. The mobilization began immediately. The Earth Defense Fleet, built in secret during the exile, emerged from hidden construction yards, sleek warships with hulls of dark metal and weapons unlike anything the Council had seen. Each ship incorporated the breakthroughs humanity had made during their isolation. Engineer Lee Hyun had equipped every vessel with dimensional anchors, devices that could force the Devourers fully into normal space. Scientist Yoon Jae-ho had designed subspace disruptors that would prevent them from phasing between dimensions. These were weapons born from necessity, from humans who refused to give up, even when cast out and abandoned. Commodore Han Ji-woo took command of the Joint Human Council fleet from the bridge of the flagship Unity. The name was ironic. Chosen deliberately. The ship represented what the Council had destroyed and what humanity now offered again. The alien officers reported to him with visible discomfort. Many had cheered when humans were expelled. Now, they took orders from a human commander, and the humiliation burned. But after watching human tactics destroy 3 Devourer vessels in the first engagement, their attitudes began to change. Ji-woo stood before the assembled fleet commanders on a holographic call. Representatives from 20 different species looked at him with expressions ranging from hope to resentment. "I know what you're thinking," Ji-woo said calmly. "You're wondering why you should trust humans. Why you should follow orders from a species you expelled. The answer is simple. Because we know how to fight this enemy and you don't. Because we spent 18 months preparing while you were celebrating our exile. Because if you want to survive, you need us." A Vex commander chittered angrily. "Your arrogance is not arrogance. Fact." Ji-woo pulled up the battle records. In 3 engagements, human forces have destroyed 7 Devourer vessels, with minimal losses. Council forces have lost 15 fleets and killed exactly 0 enemies. You want to argue about pride? Or do you want to win? The Vex commander fell silent. Dr. Park Min-ji worked alongside alien scientists in a joint research facility. The atmosphere was tense. Many of the aliens resented needing human help, but Min-ji shared her research freely, explained human breakthroughs patiently, and slowly began to earn their respect. "The Devourers feed on dimensional energy," she explained, showing detailed scans. "Every time we use faster-than-light travel near them, we're basically ringing a dinner bell. They convert organic matter and energy into fuel for their transition into our universe." "How do we stop them?" asked a Velkari scientist. "We force them completely into our dimension using the anchors Engineer Hyun designed. Once they're fully here, they become vulnerable to conventional weapons. But it requires precise timing and coordinated strikes. The joint research bore fruit quickly. Humans brought innovation. Aliens brought knowledge of the galaxy's geography and resources. Together, they developed strategies that neither could have created alone. Admiral Kim Do-yoon led the defense of the Vex refugee colonies. Thousands of insect survivors huddled on barely habitable moons, terrified and desperate. When the Devourers attacked, Do-yoon's fleet was ready. The human ships activated their dimensional anchors simultaneously. Space itself seemed to ripple and solidify. The Devourers, caught mid-phase, were forced completely into normal space. For the first time, they became solid. Vulnerable. All ships, fire, Do-yoon ordered. The combined fleet's weapons tore into the Devourer vessels. The creatures that had seemed invincible screamed across all frequencies as they died. When the battle ended, the Vex survivors cheered. Admiral Do-yoon, from the species that had been their enemy before, had saved them. Governor Choi Yuna commanded the civilian evacuation fleet. She had survived New Haven only to volunteer again for the most dangerous job. Under her coordination, millions of refugees were moved from threatened worlds to safer systems. She worked alongside alien civilians who had once cheered for humanity's exile. Now they looked at her with gratitude. "Why are you helping us?" a young Valkyrie child asked, as Yuna helped her family board a transport. "Because someone helped me once, when I needed it," Yuna replied. "Now, I'm passing it forward." The campaign continued for months. Human forces pushed the Devourers back, system by system. Each victory came at a cost. Ships were lost. Soldiers died. For the first time since the invasion began, the Council had hope. In the research facilities, Dr. Park Min-ji and scientist Yoon Jae-ho studied a captured Devourer fragment. The creature was barely alive, but conscious enough to communicate in a way. "Where did you come from?" Min-ji asked, speaking through a translation device. The response came as images and emotions rather than words. A dying universe. A civilization trying desperately to survive. A decision to invade another reality, rather than face extinction in their own. "They're refugees," Yoon Jae-ho said softly. "Desperate, violent refugees who chose to destroy us rather than die themselves." "That doesn't excuse what they've done," Min-ji replied. "But it explains it." The interrogation revealed something crucial. The Devourers were coming through a massive, dimensional breach at the edge of the galaxy. A wound in reality itself, growing larger with each passing day. If it wasn't closed, the invasion would never stop. Commodore Jiwoo called a meeting of all senior commanders. He presented the findings bluntly. "We need to close the breach. That requires sending a strike force through to the other side and collapsing it from within. It's a one-way trip. Anyone who goes won't come back." The room fell silent. Finally, Admiral Do-yoon spoke. "I volunteer." "No," Jiwoo said. "You're needed here to command the defense." "I'll lead the mission." Dr. Park Min-ji stood. "You'll need me. I understand the dimensional physics. I can calibrate the collapse." Governor Choi Yuna stepped forward. "You'll need someone to coordinate the civilian evacuations from nearby systems first." "I'm in." I'm in. I'm in." One by one, volunteers came forward. Humans who had been cast out and betrayed, now willing to sacrifice themselves for a galaxy that had rejected them. But they weren't alone. Ambassador Krell approached the front of the room. "I owe humanity a debt I can never repay," he said. "Let me do this one thing right. Let me help close the breach." High Chancellor Thorin stood as well. "My decisions led to this crisis. I should be the one to fix it." Jiwoo looked at the aliens who had wronged humanity so badly, now ready to die alongside humans to save the galaxy. Maybe that was what redemption looked like. Not words, but actions. Not apologies, but sacrifice. "All right," he said. "We leave in 3 days. Get your affairs in order." President Nam Sojun met privately with Commodore Jiwoo before the mission. "You don't have to do this. You've given enough." "Someone has to," Jiwoo replied. "And I'd rather it be me than anyone else. The galaxy will remember what you're doing, what humanity is doing." Jiwoo smiled sadly. "Make sure they remember why we had to do it in the first place. Make sure they never cast out another species out of fear or jealousy." The strike force assembled. 20 ships, 500 volunteers, human and alien, working together for what might be the last time. As they prepared to jump into the dimensional breach, Commodore Han Jiwoo sent one final message to Earth. "We go now to end this war. Whatever happens, know that humanity proved itself today. Not through strength, but through choosing to help those who hurt us. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us better." The dimensional breach hung in space like a wound in reality itself. It pulsed with sickly colors that shouldn't exist, radiating energy that made instruments scream in protest. 20 ships approached it, their crews knowing that beyond that threshold lay only death or glory. Commodore Han Jiwoo sat in the command chair of the Unity, watching the breach grow larger on his screens. Behind him, Dr. Park Minji checked and rechecked her calculations. They had one chance to collapse the breach from inside. One chance to seal the doorway between universes and stop the Devourer invasion forever. "All ships report ready," his communications officer said. Jiwoo opened a channel to the entire strike force. Humans and aliens together, volunteers all. "This is it. Beyond that breach is the staging dimension where the Devourers are gathering. Our job is simple. Get Dr. Park to the dimensional anchor point. Protect her while she sets the collapse sequence, and hold position until it's done. We all knew this was one way when we signed up. No regrets. No fear. Let's save the galaxy." The ships accelerated toward the breach. As they crossed the threshold, reality twisted around them. Colors inverted. Time seemed to flow backward and forward simultaneously. Every sensor went haywire, but the ships held together, pushed through by the determination of their crews. On the other side, they emerged into nightmare. The staging dimension was vast and empty, a void between universes where the laws of physics operated differently. Floating in that emptiness were thousands of Devourer vessels, far more than intelligence had estimated. They had been gathering here, preparing for a massive final assault that would have consumed the entire galaxy. "Contact," Admiral Doyun's voice came over the comm. The battle began immediately. Devourer vessels swarmed the human-alien fleet like predators sensing wounded prey. But in this dimension, the dimensional anchors worked even better than in normal space. Every Devourer that approached became solid, became vulnerable. The human ships fought with precision born from months of combat. Alien vessels that had once fled in terror now stood their ground, inspired by human courage. Together, they carved a path through the enemy forces. Governor Choi Yuna commanded a wing of evacuation ships that had been retrofitted with weapons. Her job was to draw Devourer attention away from the Unity. She did it brilliantly, leading the enemy on a chase through the void, while Jiwoo's ship pushed toward the anchor point. "Dr. Park, how long do you need?" Jiwoo asked. Minji worked frantically at her console, deploying probes that would measure the dimensional structure. 10 minutes to analyze the breach structure. Another 20 to set the collapse sequence. 30 minutes total. "We'll buy you 30 minutes. Jiwoo switched to fleet-wide communications. "All ships, hold them off for 30 minutes. That's all we need." The fighting was brutal. Ship after ship took damage. The alien cruiser carrying Ambassador Krell lost its shields and took a direct hit. Krell himself was killed instantly, dying while protecting the humans he had once betrayed. His sacrifice bought the Unity precious seconds. High Chancellor Thorin's ship positioned itself between the Unity and a massive Devourer dreadnought. "For the galaxy," Thorin transmitted, before ramming his vessel into the enemy at full speed. The explosion destroyed both ships, but cleared the path forward. Admiral Doyun's flagship took critical damage defending the right flank. His bridge was breached, killing half his crew. But he kept fighting from an auxiliary control room, refusing to abandon his post even as his ship fell apart around him. "I'm through," Dr. Park Minji announced. "I have the breach structure. Starting collapse sequence now." The Unity reached the anchor point, a specific location where the dimensions were thinnest. Minji deployed the collapse device, a piece of technology that represented humanity's greatest scientific achievement. It would force the breach closed, sealing it permanently. But it needed time to charge. 20 minutes to full collapse, Minji reported. Then another 3 minutes for the actual closure. Around them, the battle raged. The strike force was down to 12 ships, then 9, then 6. Every vessel fought desperately, buying seconds and minutes with their lives. Commodore Jiwoo watched his fleet die around him. These people, human and alien, had volunteered knowing they wouldn't return. But knowing it and watching it happen were different things. Each death weighed on him like a stone. 10 minutes to collapse, Minji said. Her voice was steady, but Jiwoo could see her hands shaking. A group of Devourer vessels broke through the defensive line, heading straight for the Unity. There were no ships left to intercept them. But then, from the side, Governor Choi Yuna's damaged evacuation ship slammed into the lead Devourer at ramming speed. "Goodbye, everyone," Yuna transmitted. "Make it count." The explosion destroyed both vessels and damaged 2 more Devourers, but 3 got through. They were seconds from the Unity when engineer Lee Hyun did something impossible. He overloaded the Unity's dimensional anchor, creating a field so powerful it solidified every Devourer within a kilometer. They became solid, vulnerable, dead, in space. "That was our only anchor," Hyun reported calmly. "We have no defense now." "We don't need defense," Jiwoo replied. "We need Dr. Park to finish her work." The remaining ships formed a final defensive sphere around the Unity. 3 human vessels and 2 alien cruisers, all damaged, all running on emergency power. Against them came hundreds of Devourer ships, sensing victory. 5 minutes, Minji said. Scientist Yoon Jae-ho had joined the mission as Minji's assistant. Now he monitored the collapse sequence, making tiny adjustments to keep it stable. "The dimensional structure is fighting us. It wants to stay open. Force it closed," Minji ordered. "Redirect power from life support if you have to." The Unity shook as Devourer weapons struck its hull. Shields were down. Armor was failing. But the collapse device kept charging. 2 minutes, Minji announced. Admiral Doyun's voice came over the comm, weak and fading. "My ship is done. Setting it for collision course." "It's been an honor, Commodore." "The honor was mine, Admiral," Jiwoo replied. Doyun's flagship, burning and broken, accelerated into the enemy formation. Its reactor went critical, destroying dozens of Devourer vessels in a blast that lit up the void like a newborn star. 1 minute, Minji said. The Unity's hull began to fail. Sections of the ship decompressed. Systems died. But the collapse device reached full charge. "Initiating dimensional collapse," Minji announced. She pressed the final sequence. Reality screamed. The breach began to close. Dimensions folding in on themselves. The Devourers, sensing what was happening, threw everything at the Unity in a desperate final assault. But it was too late. The collapse had begun, and nothing could stop it now. Commodore Han Jiwoo stood on his bridge as it fell apart around him. Through the view screen, he watched the breach seal itself, watched thousands of Devourer vessels get caught in the collapse and torn apart. "We did it," Minji said, smiling even as blood ran down her face from a head wound. "We saved the galaxy." Jiwoo activated his personal log, recording a final message. "This is Commodore Han Jiwoo, commanding officer of the Unity, reporting mission success. The dimensional breach has been sealed. The Devourer invasion is over. To anyone receiving this message, remember what happened here. Remember that humanity was cast out, betrayed, and abandoned. But when the galaxy needed us most, we came. We fought. We died. Not for reward or recognition, but because it was right. Tell our families we love them. Tell Earth we were proud to serve. Tell the galaxy that humanity has earned its place among the stars. The dimensional collapse reached the unity. Dr. Park Min-ji held Jiwoo's hand as reality folded around them. Engineer Lee Hyun and scientist Yoon Jae-ho stood together at their stations, professional to the end. The crew faced their deaths with dignity and courage. The last transmission from the Unity was simple. Mission accomplished. Humanity out. Then silence. In council space, the remaining Devourer vessels suddenly lost cohesion. Without the dimensional breach sustaining them, they began to fade back into their dying universe. Within hours, the invasion was over. The galaxy was saved, but at terrible cost. President Nam Seo-jun stood before the memorial wall being constructed in Geneva. 500 names were carved into black stone. Humans and aliens who had sacrificed themselves for a galaxy that had wronged them. At the top, in letters of gold, were the names of those who led them. Commodore Han Ji-woo, Dr. Park Min-ji, Admiral Kim Do-yoon, Governor Choi Yoon-ah, Engineer Lee Hyun, Scientist Yoon Jae-ho. And yes, even Ambassador Krell and High Chancellor Thorin, they had died as heroes. Whatever they had been before, the galaxy mourned. Every inhabited world held ceremonies. Every species honored the fallen. The Galactic Council was reformed. This time with humanity not just as members, but as founders of a new order. The quarantine zone around Sol was dissolved and redesignated as a memorial. No ships would ever enter it again without permission. It became a reminder of humanity's exile and their triumphant return. 3 months after the battle, a strange signal was detected in the debris field near where the breach had been. A single escape pod, heavily damaged but intact. Inside was an emergency stasis chamber. When they opened it, they found Commodore Han Ji-woo, barely alive. He had been blown clear in the final explosion, somehow surviving in the pod's stasis field. He was the only survivor of the strike force. Ji-woo recovered slowly. When he was strong enough, President Nam Seo-jun visited him personally. "You're a hero," the president said. "The galaxy wants to honor you. Parades, medals, monuments." Ji-woo shook his head weakly. "I don't want parades. I want to make sure we never forget. The council cast us out because they feared us. They nearly destroyed themselves because of that fear. Make sure it never happens again." "I will," Nam Seo-jun promised. "The new council charter includes protections against what happened to us. No species can be expelled without cause. No evidence can be presented without independent verification. And humans have veto power over all major decisions." "Good. Then they died for something that matters." The galaxy rebuilt. Humans and aliens worked together to repair the damaged systems, to help the refugees find new homes, to create a council that served all its members equally. Engineer Lee Hyun's designs became standard throughout the galaxy. Scientist Yoon Jae-ho's theories revolutionized dimensional physics. Dr. Park Min-ji's research opened new fields of study. Their legacies lived on in the technology and knowledge that protected the galaxy. Governor Choi Yoon-ah's name became synonymous with selfless service. Schools across dozens of worlds were named after her. Admiral Kim Do-yoon was remembered as the defender who never retreated. And humanity, once cast out and labeled dangerous, became known as the species that saved the galaxy when no one else could. They had proven that being different, advancing quickly, thinking in new ways wasn't a threat. It was the galaxy's greatest strength. 10 years after the exile, Commodore Ji-woo stood at the memorial in Geneva. He was older now, his hair gray, but his eyes still sharp. Around him stood representatives from every species in the galaxy. They had come to honor the fallen and to remember the lessons of that terrible time. "We were cast out because we were different," Ji-woo said to the assembled crowd. "We were feared because we changed quickly. We were betrayed because others saw us as threats. But we responded not with revenge, but with mercy. We helped those who hurt us. We saved those who condemned us. That is what humanity means. That is what the galaxy must remember. The crowd was silent. Then, one by one, they began to applaud. It started with the humans, but quickly spread to every species. They applauded for the fallen. They applauded for the survivors. They applauded for a lesson learned in blood and sacrifice. The galaxy had cast humanity out. But humanity had returned, not as conquerors or as victims, but as saviors. And in doing so, they had shown the universe what true strength looked like. Not the power to destroy, but the courage to forgive. Not the ability to hold grudges, but the wisdom to help those in need. Not superiority over others, but the humility to work together. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. That was their triumph. And in the stars above, where 500 heroes had died to save billions, their sacrifice ensured that the galaxy would never forget.